quite a bit to cover, and I want to make sure that we end on time. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. And for those of you who just joined, please put your name, both first and last, as well as your school name and the email address at which you'd like to receive the training certificate for today. And just to make sure we're all on the same page, you have joined the training for verifying applications for meal benefits, which is a requirement of the school nutrition programs. And you are, your trainers today are me, of course, Katie Parch. I'm the director of the child nutrition programs at the Nebraska Department of Education. And I'm also joined by Megan Peel, our nutrition system and summer EBT program specialist. And we've got about 45 slides to cover, which has taken us about an hour when we've presented this in the past. And then we've left some time at the end of today's training for you to ask questions. So if you think of questions throughout the course of us presenting the information today, don't hesitate to record those in the Zoom chat, because we will make sure we cover all of those that are placed in the Zoom chat during that time after the slide presentation is concluded. And then we also want to encourage you to unmute and ask your question that way if you'd like to, again, when we're finished presenting the slides. So a couple of ways you can ask questions that you think of throughout the training. We love questions, right? We may not have the answer to every question you ask right here, right now, but we have answers to some, probably most, but on other ones we don't know for sure. We will take some time to investigate and then get back to you about what the correct answer is or what the guidance is that you may need. So today's training aims to do three things: explain what verification is as well as what it does. We also will identify how to properly select applications for verification. And then we'll also identify the timeline for the required verification activities. So the National School Lunch Act requires that schools that utilize meal applications or applications for meal benefits as a way to provide individual students with free or reduced price meals must conduct verification of those applications. This would include applications that the school approves for free or reduced price meals in a number of different ways. So if you've attended our bookkeeper training in the past, you're familiar with these. It would be those applications that report a SNAP, TANF, or FDPIR master case number for some member of the household that lives with the student. It might be an application that was determined or approved for free or reduced price meals based on household size and household income. And it could be applications that indicate other source categorical eligibility for a student in a household, which would include migrant, homeless, runaway, perhaps Head Start or foster as well. So all of those are ways that individual students can qualify to receive meal benefits. And that is what we are working to make sure is correct through the process of verification. There are a couple of helpful resources I want to draw your attention to. And we are recording this training today, so it will become a resource available to you through our website. We also have access to the USDA School Meals Eligibility Manual, as well as a host of other resources, including letter templates, as well as today's training, which will be available on the Nutrition Services page called Verifying Income Eligibility. So when we send the recording and the slides from today out, the hyperlinks you see on this slide will be available in that PDF version of the slide deck for today. So you'll be able to click directly on the links to both of the items you see here when you get access to the slide deck next week. There are two important dates that apply to verification for every school year. These dates don't change. October 1st is important because that is the date on which you make your verification selection pool based on the total number of applications your school received and approved for free or reduced price meals. So the total number of apps you get as of October 1st next week, of those that are approved for free and reduced price meals, that becomes the application pool from which you select applications randomly to conduct verification on. And we'll talk more about that process in the future slides. Another date written into the program rules and regulations is November 15th. And historically, that is the date that a school must complete its verification activities and submit the annual verification report in the CNP system. If you check the calendar for 2025, November 15th is actually a Saturday, I believe. So technically the report that you must complete in the CNP system will be due on Monday, November 17th. But because again, the 15th is not a normal business day of the work week, we push it to the next available business day. Can you please take a moment to make sure you're muted? Thank you.
Put the popcorn things out. Popcorn machine.
So training on completion of the annual verification report will be provided in another Zoom format like this one on both November 4th and November 13th. So in those trainings, we'll walk through step by step the data fields that are required for the verification report and help answer questions you might have about what to report where. So we'll provide additional communication prior to that submission deadline as well, in addition to offering these two training opportunities where you can come, hear what we've got to say, hear that guidance we are ready to provide, and then ask questions if you have any. There are a few key terms to keep in mind for the verification process. The first is the term direct verification, which in Nebraska is really, really rare to use because of our robust and reliable direct certification system. The definition of direct verification is the use of records from a public agency to verify children's eligibility for free or reduced price meal benefits. And we do that really well through direct certification. So if schools are doing a good job of making sure that their student enrollment data is correct in the advisor system or in the direct certification system's enrollment page, then you have a very high likelihood that all of the students enrolled in your school who should qualify through the direct certification process are doing so. And therefore you have no reason or need to conduct direct verification because we're getting all of that information for students who participate in a public assistance program that is administered through DHHS via the direct certification system. I want to take a moment to define error-prone. That is a type of application that's approved for free or reduced price meals, and these applications report total household income within $100 per month or $1,200 per year for the annual income thresholds of an applicable income eligibility guideline for that household size. So it's those applications that report total household income at a value very close to the income threshold for a specific free or reduced price meal benefit based on that total member of household size. A random sampling is a sampling process where each application has an equal chance of being selected. And then the sampling pool would be the total number of applications approved for free or reduced price meals as of October 1st. So that was one of those important dates we saw on the previous slide. It's that October 1st date at which you would total up all of the applications approved for free or reduced price meals, and that becomes the application or sampling pool from which you make those random selections of applications to verify. So verification is important, obviously, to verify that the information submitted on applications approved for free or reduced price meals is true and accurate. Of course, this effort supports program integrity and honesty of information that's reported by households. And the household letter that accompanies the application for meal benefits identifies the likelihood or chances or possibility that an application submitted by a household could be selected for verification and that they may be asked to provide supporting documentation or some type of proof that what they recorded on the application is accurate. I want to call out districts that operate community eligibility provision schools here. So a district that operates the CEP in all of its buildings, or another way to think of that would be that CEP is used to provide no-cost meals for all students enrolled in a district, do not conduct verification. These types of schools that provide the no-cost meals through CEP to all students in the district should not be distributing applications for meal benefits because children's access to the no-cost meals through CEP has no bearing on their completion of an individual household application for free or reduced price meals. Some CEP schools utilize an alternate income form to identify students who meet the income eligibility guidelines for the free or reduced price meals, but is used for a different purpose other than meals. It might be used for a discount on a student activity pass, a discount for band instruments or uniform, or something like that. And there is no federal regulation that says a school that utilizes an alternate income form for the purpose of identifying students eligible for a non-meal benefit would need to conduct verification. So again, if you're CEP, you utilize that alternate income form for the purpose of something other than meals, you do not need to conduct verification on those. You can choose to, but it's nothing you would report to the NDE. Schools that have a mix of CEP buildings where students enrolled in those buildings get no-cost meals, as well as other buildings that utilize the traditional pricing program where students qualify for free, reduced, or paid price meals, do need to conduct verification on applications that the school district receives and approves for free or reduced price meals for the students enrolled in the pricing buildings. And it's possible that you may receive a meal application for a household that has both a CEP student and a non-CEP student on it. And if that application was approved for meal benefits, or it would apply, of course, to the student in the non-CEP pricing building, then yes, it does need to become part of the pool of applications that you would select from to verify. So let's talk for a moment about establishing that verification sample. The sample pool uses the total number of applications approved for free or reduced price meals as of that important October 1st date, and 3% of the number of those approved applications, which would include both paper applications submitted to the district, as well as any electronic or online applications the district may receive if it has an option like that, would all be included in the sampling pool and would be ones you would select from to reach that 3% threshold. We'll talk more about that in just a moment. I want to make sure you know that you should include applications that have a master case number for SNAP, TANF, and FDPIR, as well as applications approved for free or reduced price meals based on household income and household size, as well as applications with a foster child indicated on it. Let's look at a couple of examples that help illustrate the process for establishing the verification pool. In this example, you receive a meal application submitted to the school and approved for reduced price meals. The child on that application also appears in the direct certification list as a SNAP match, and SNAP gives free meal benefits to that child or that student. In this example, the higher benefit of free meals is issued to the student based on direct certification, which makes the information on the application with a lower benefit of reduced price meals, with which it was approved for, means that application does not need to be included in the verification pool. It's not included because the student benefit of free meals was derived from the direct certification, not from that approved application. Let's check out one more example. The school received a meal application that was submitted and approved for free meals based on household income. This child also appears on the direct certification list and is matched for Medicaid reduced or reduced price meals. The higher benefit of free meals based on the application should be issued to the student, and that means this application is included in the verification pool because the student benefit, the higher benefit of free meals, was derived from the meal application that they submitted to the school. So in summary, if a meal application provides a higher benefit than direct certification, then the meal application becomes part of the verification pool. If the meal application provides the same or lesser or lower benefit than direct certification, that application is not included in the verification pool and could not be selected for verification. Let's look at an example that includes categorical eligibility, which can be derived from a master case number for SNAP, TANF, or FDPIR. In this example, the application the school receives includes the master case number for SNAP, TANF, or FDPIR. These applications should be approved upon submission to the school. The eligibility manual indicates you're supposed to approve those at face value upon receipt. You should not delay approval of that application. No proof documentation for that SNAP master case number is needed for that initial approval. Again, approve it upon receipt based on it being a complete application with all required components if it also has that master case number. This application becomes part of the verification pool, even if no child on the application is directly certified for SNAP or Medicaid free, right? That SNAP master case number allows the child to have free meal benefits and has to become part of the verification pool if that child does not appear on the direct certification list. If any child on that application does also happen to be directly certified for SNAP or even Medicaid free, then again, that application is not part of the verification pool because the direct certification meal benefits matches the type of benefit, in this case, free meals, that the application showed. So that direct certification sort of trumps or supersedes whatever the application might say or contain, as long as those benefits level identified in direct certification and on the application are the same. Again, if an application's information determines a higher benefit than direct certification does, you give the student the higher benefit and then include that application in the verification pool. Other source categorical eligibility, including homeless, migrant, or runaway, require proof of program participation upon receipt of that application in order for a child of that status to receive free meals. So this is different than accepting foster or a master case number, where you take those at face value and approve the application for free meals. Migrant, homeless, and runaway do require additional proof documentation before that application can be approved. And again, for homeless, migrant, and runaway students, the meal benefits, in this case free meals, would be applied only for the student with that designation. You've got to have that proof of information of participation in one of those programs for every individual student that might be represented on a meal application. It's only those that you have that proof documentation for homeless, migrant, or runaway status that are allowed to receive free meals. The eligibility manual says, for a definition of a migrant student, it's a child enrolled in the migrant education program as determined by a state or local migrant education program coordinator or a homeless liaison for students who are identified as homeless. Many of the students participating in one of those programs are identified through direct certification. However, the direct certification system or process of populating those students in the match list can be a bit slower. So we encourage you to seek out information from your homeless liaison or your migrant education program coordinator to receive that paper proof of participation in the program. So for those other source categorical eligibility students, including migrant, homeless, and runaway, those applications are included in your verification pool only if your school did not request and receive that proof documentation when the application was received. It should be done upon receipt of the application, We understand there might be instances where that requirement was overlooked. And if that's the case, we want you to put those applications into the verification pool. However, if you did receive that proof documentation, or if the student is matched directly certified on the match list, then that application indicating migrant, homeless, or runaway student does not need to be included in the verification pool because you have that supporting documentation already on file. The final type of other source categorical eligibility is foster children. Foster children indicated on an application for meal benefits can be processed without that supporting proof or supporting documentation at the time of approval. So different than migrant, and homeless. Different than homeless, migrant, and runaway. Foster is a lot like an application with a master case number. You process that at face value if the application is complete. You approve it as the foster child only receiving free meals. If there are other students on that application who are not foster, then their meal benefits need to be determined in a different fashion, probably by income reported on an application, for example. But in this example, for a foster student identified on a meal application, having no other children on that application, that child is approved for free meals. That application is approved for free meals, and then it becomes part of your verification pool. That application with a child receiving free meals based on foster status, of course, would be included in the verification pool. And if selected, that household must provide proof of foster status if that child is not directly certified or is not on the match list identified as foster or some other free meal benefit program. Mixed household applications are somewhat common, and I've got an example I'd love to illustrate how to handle that one. In this example, you have a foster child living with 3 other students who qualify for reduced price meals based on household income. So you've got the one foster child, and based on the foster status is approved for free meals at the beginning of the school year or whenever that application is received. Then you have the 3 other students who were approved to receive reduced price meals based on income reported on the application. So you have 2 different benefit levels derived from a single application for meal benefits. Because the 3 students receiving reduced price meals based on household income are on the application, the app would of course become part of your verification pool and could be selected. Additionally, the school would require proof of foster status if it was also that application was pulled because it's part of the verification pool. And in this case, you would be requesting or need to request 2 different types of proof for the information provided on that application. You need the income or proof of income documentation for the approval of the reduced price meal benefits for 3 of the students on the application. And then you'd also need additional proof or documentation of the foster student status for the single foster child listed on the application. This table displays a summary of all of the types of applications and whether or not they would become part of the verification pool or not. So really, it's just a review of what we discussed on the last several slides. I won't go through it all again, but might be a nice reference point if you need to have it all in one place or need to share this information with other folks at your school who provide support for the verification process. In some situations, a meal application may be verified for cause, and verification for cause is separate from the required verification random sampling of applications that we've talked about so far. Schools must verify all questionable applications on a case-by-case basis. Again, verifying an application for cause is not included in the random required sample of approved meal applications. Again, that random sample is based on the number of applications that are approved for meal benefits as of October 1st. And verification for cause can happen at any time during the school year. If you received an application, it was approved for meal benefits, you have reason to perhaps doubt what is on the application, or they've changed their story several times about their income situation, you would go ahead and verify that application, even though it was received and processed after October 1st. In a situation where you need to verify for cause, keep in mind you cannot delay the approval of these kinds of applications, but you should begin the verification process only after that determination has been made. You can send the benefit issuance notice, right? Approve that application, and then immediately begin the verification process if you have a reason or cause to do so. So the standard type of verification, as well as the alternate sample size, are available as part of that verification process. Standard verification requires that schools utilize a 3% sample of all applications approved by the school as of October 1st of the current school year, and these should be selected from the error-prone applications, and we'll talk more about that. But remember, error-prone applications are the applications with income reported that is very close to the income guideline or threshold for that household size. Alternatively, the alternate sample sizes for qualified schools, right? This is available only to certain schools, and we'll talk more about what those are in a moment, requires a 3% sample of all applications approved as of October 1st of the current year, and these are selected at random. They do not have to put emphasis on error-prone applications, right? Error-prone, again, meaning that income reported is really close to the income eligibility threshold for that household size. That applies to standard. This alternate does not place that kind of emphasis on applications that have income reported that is very close to the income guideline or threshold. So when it comes to establishing the type of verification your school must do or could do, you would ask yourself this question first. Did your school have a 20% or more non-response rate to requests for verification in the previous or preceding school year? If you answer yes, then you must conduct standard verification. You could, if you answered no to that question, right? No, my school did not have a 20% or greater non-response rate, then you may conduct the alternate verification method, but you can choose to do the standard method that emphasizes those error-prone applications. You just don't have to. Another way of asking that, was your school's non-response rate in the preceding year less than 20%? If the answer is yes, you may conduct that alternate verification method called alternate 1, right? You may, but don't have to. It might be easier for you to do the alternate where you just take a 3% sample of all of the applications you received. On the other hand, if your answer to this question is no, my non-response rate was not less than 20%, as in it was 20% or more, right? Then I am required to do standard verification, which again puts extra emphasis on those applications with error-prone income reported on them. So NDE already did provide communication to every school, identifying the required or available type of verification, which was based on the results of verification reported in the annual verification report in November of 2024. And Megan sent out the notices for the various schools based on what our results from verification last year showed us, where she identified the schools who are required to conduct standard verification, as well as a separate notice to schools that may conduct the alternate method of verification. So that email was very detailed and comprehensive. It outlines the steps of the option that your school must do if you must do standard, or could or may choose to do if you're eligible to do the alternate option. If you have questions about that, again, refer to this training because we're going to continue and outline the rest of the process, but don't hesitate to reach out to Megan or me to ask questions if you just need a little bit of additional guidance. So the important thing to ask yourself or to determine is, what is the non-response rate? Of course, that's how we determine if a school must do standard verification or could utilize that alternate option. So in the preceding school year, let's do an example. where a school approved 50 applications for free or reduced price meals. With either type of verification, the 3% sample is required. It just depends on where we're putting that emphasis. Do we need to emphasize error-prone ones, or do we not have to do that? So 3% of the 50 approved applications equals 1.5. As you can imagine, it is impossible to verify a part or a fraction of an application. So anytime the math here, the 3% of whatever number of approved applications you had as of October 1st last year, right? Anytime there's a decimal value, you're going to round it up to the next whole number. So 1.5 would have been rounded up to 2 applications that must have been verified last year. So last fall, you sent out the 2 requests for verification, but only one of those was returned. And you got what you needed, right? Proof of income. Whether or not the benefit changed based on the proof they provided is irrelevant. The household responded, that counts as a response. The other household never sent you anything, never called and said, I'm not going to give you that stuff you requested. Literally crickets, right? You got 1 out of the 2 you requested. That makes your non-response rate 50%. And of course, that exceeds the 20%. And that means that school must conduct standard verification in this year here. So that's how we're making that determination. And that's the basis from which we determined which schools are required to do standard versus those who have the option to do the alternate. And that's how we determined which email your school received. So that standard verification method, again, should emphasize those error-prone meal applications utilizing the 3% sample of the total applications approved as of October 1st. And we do make this error-prone income chart available to you. It is on the verification webpage that we have this training on, where we keep the letter templates for verification. You'll also have access to this, and you should have received it if you were a school that's required to do the standard verification method that Megan sent the email for. This should have been attached to that as well. Okay, so that standard verification sample size and type, to do one more example or expand on the previous example to finish this one out. You approved those 50 applications. 20 of the 50 had income within $1,200 of the annual income limit for that household size. That makes those 20 applications error prone because that income they reported is really close to that income guideline threshold. So again, step 1, what's 3% of the total number of apps I approved, which was 50? That equals 1.5. We're going to round that up to 2. I know I have got to verify 2 applications. My school has been assigned to do standard verification. So that means I need to randomly select 2 applications from the 20 that were identified as error prone. Okay. If I approved 15 applications for free or reduced price meals, only one of those was identified as error prone. The arrow got moved a bit there. 3% of 15 is 0.45. I'm rounding that up to 1. I don't really have a random sample of error-prone applications in this example because I received only 1, and I have to verify 1 application. Therefore, I'm selecting that single error-prone application I received, and that's the one I need to conduct verification on. Again, 1 meets that 3% requirement of the 15 I approved for meal benefits, right? And I got only 1 error-prone app, so therefore that's the only one I need to select. I'm going to conduct verification on that single application. If you didn't receive any applications with income reported in that error-prone range, then you would randomly select from your pool of approved applications. If you're unable to meet that error-prone requirement because no one submitted an application that had income reported at such a close value to the income threshold, then you're just going to randomly select a single application from the ones that you approved. So again, what if you don't have enough error-prone applications? Similar to that last example, If you have fewer error-prone applications than you are needing in order to comply with the 3% verification sample, of course, select all of the error-prone applications you received and then make up the difference between what you have in error-prone apps and how many more you need just from the general sample of the non-error-prone applications. This is, again, if you've been assigned the standard verification process. You have got to verify the minimum number of applications based on 3% of all of them that you received. We understand, though, you may not have enough from the error-prone pool, so make up the difference from all the other applications you received in order to verify a minimum of 3% of those that you approved as of October 1st. For those schools that are allowed to utilize the alternate verification method, I've called out, highlighted, brought attention to the first bullet here. There are a couple of ways this alternate option 1 can be done in Nebraska based on what we historically see for the number of meal applications submitted to school districts and approved for meal benefits. I believe only the first one would apply to districts in Nebraska. Okay, it's a bit simpler than trying to read, explain, and understand the bottom bullet, so you can ignore that for now. If your school is eligible to do the alternate method, it would select 3% of all the applications approved by the district for the school year, again, as of October 1st, just selected at random, right? No mention of error-prone applications in this process. You don't have to separate out or identify error-prone applications. Just put all of the applications you approved for benefits as of October 1st in a pile, right, a pile or in a list, and randomly select that 3% value of those. Again, no emphasis on error prone. So in this alternate verification example, this school had a 0% non-response rate in the preceding year, which is great, right? Maybe they had a small number of applications, needed to verify only one last fall. The family responded, got everything the school needed, good to go. That's a 0% non-response rate, right? Everyone responded. You had no non-respondents. That's great, okay? This year, you approved 15 applications for free or reduced price meals as of October 1st. So, of course, you're going to determine what 3% of 15 is. Like the previous example, the math works out the same way. That is 0.45, which we're going to round up to 1. So the school must verify just one application of those approved for free or reduced price meals. Does not have to include any application that reported income within that error-prone range. So before you provide the notification to the selected households that must respond to your verification request, ensure that your school's confirming official has reviewed, signed, and dated all selected applications to certify the meal benefit approved on that application was done correctly. So you see I've kind of called that out or highlighted that with the yellow box, which is a snip from the bottom section of the NDE's version of the meal application. Right, in this example, Mary Nelson would have approved the application for free or reduced price meals on August 15th, in this case, 2025. Then, if this application is one of those that's randomly selected for verification, Jamie comes along, reviews the application, right, makes sure that the determination for free or reduced price meals was done correctly based on the application, the information submitted on the application. And then Jamie's going to date that the day she did that confirmation, October 1st in this example. So make sure that gets done for those applications that you're randomly selecting to do verification on. Okay, after you've done this certification process, you're obviously going to need to notify the household that they've been selected and identify what they need to do to respond. So you're going to send that verification selection letter. The NDE makes available a template for this. We call it Attachment F. If you have a student information system or a POS system that integrates or has these letters available, then you can certainly use your version based on the system that you use and pay for. I would encourage you to review page 106 of the eligibility manual. It identifies all of the required components of that notification letter. So do a side-by-side comparison of your school's version of the notification letter to those bulleted requirements that are outlined on page 106. Our version, attachment F, does include all of those required components. I haven't listed them all, but I've listed some of them on the slide. This notification letter must inform, or the school must inform in writing to the household and identify the documents that household should submit to the school. The requirements also state that that letter or notification must be understandable and in uniform format, and then must provide written verification notices in the parent or guardian's primary language. So our version of attachment F has both an English and a Spanish version. If you need additional translations that your school is unable to provide, doesn't have the resource to do or translate to, please let us know. It's our job to help make sure you have what you need. And keep in mind that a school must make at least one follow-up attempt before the submission deadline. So you're sending the original notice, right? Your application was selected for verification. Here's what you need to provide me, and this is the deadline by which you should provide it. If you're approaching that deadline and have not heard from the family, have not received any documentation that was requested, you're required to make at least one follow-up attempt before that submission deadline. You should document this, of course. You want to document every piece and part and step of the verification process, as that's a requirement for the record keeping that the schools are required to do. For applications that reported income, I've outlined a couple of things to keep in mind for that income verification. Proof of income must include the name of the household member who earned the money, the amount earned, and the frequency of that income received, as well as a date it was received. A pay stub with no dates on it would not be sufficient and could not be used to verify the income reported on the meal application. The income proof documentation should also be from the time period immediately preceding the submission of the application, the month the application was submitted, or for any month after the submission of application up until the verification date or process began. So if an application was submitted on August 15th, a household is paid biweekly, or the earning member of the household is paid biweekly, they could give you a pay stub from the 2 weeks preceding the date they submitted the application, or from any time between submission and when verification was conducted. If a weekly pay stub is representative of what the household normally receives each week, then just that single pay stub is sufficient to meet the requirements for verifying income. If you receive a pay stub that includes overtime, then the determining official, the person originally who processed the application and made the determination, should have worked with the household to determine whether that overtime for the month is representative of overtime received in other months. So if that overtime is sort of like a 1 week, one-time sporadic type of event that is not normal for that person or that person earning the income, then it does not have to be calculated based on a regular monthly income or included in that regular monthly income as part of the verification process. If it's a really infrequent, like I said, sporadic, unreliable thing that is not providing regular increased income to the household, then you wouldn't need to include it in determining if the documentation they provide to prove the income they recorded on the application is correct or matches. Some applications may report zero income, like a 0 in the income section of the application, or marking the box indicating they have no income. Of course, you approve that application at face value when you receive it if it contains all other parts of a complete application. And if this type of application is selected, the school must request an explanation of how living expenses are met. And in support of this and getting adequate information that really gives you confidence that what they're reporting is accurate, you may request additional written documentation or an attestation, a statement, something from a collateral contact, which is a person outside the household who can affirm or confirm that the information the household provided you is accurate based on their circumstances or situation. So we've got a definition of a collateral contact here. If written evidence is not sufficient, you may require use of that collateral contact. Again, this is a person outside the household, but with enough knowledge about the household circumstances that they can confirm an income level, or in the case of a no income application, could confirm that as well. All information provided by a collateral contact, whether it's information provided in writing or orally via a phone call, must be documented, dated, and initialed. Like I said a couple of slides ago, you want to keep detailed records on the process for each of the applications that your school verifies. This would become part of those notes that would accompany any other documentation that you keep pertaining to application of a specific, and pertaining to verification of a specific application. So there are a couple of post notification procedures. Again, notification is sending that attachment F, letting the household know that they need to submit documentation to support what they put on the meal application. As I said before, the school must provide at least one reminder for verification before the deadline that was identified on attachment F. This can be a phone call, it can be an email, it can be a letter reminder. Whatever it is, make sure you're recording it, what you did, what date you did it, if you received any response whatsoever, because that's how you can determine if verification is complete. Of course, you know it's complete when the household responds with the information that you requested. Based on the information they provided, you're going to be able to determine if that student's meal benefit needs to change or not. Of course, a change would be warranted if what they provided didn't match exactly what was on the application. And in many cases, it's that their income might be higher than what they reported. They don't have proof to show that what they put on the application really was true and correct for their total household income. That's going to result in a benefit change most likely if they don't meet the income guidelines identified on the meal application. Or if they can't provide proof of participation in homeless, migrant, or runaway program, or proof that the student is a foster child. All of those would warrant a change in benefits. You could also consider verification complete if the household calls you or sends an email in which they say, I'm not going to provide you with the information you requested. That counts as a response, right? So it's not counting against you in terms of the non-response rate, but of course it means there needs to be a change to paid meal status for the students on that application that was selected for verification, and then you heard from the household that they weren't going to give you what you asked for. Similarly, a non-response, as in you heard nothing from the household after sending the notification letter as well as the reminder, right? They didn't respond to you. Of course, it counts as a non-response that also requires a change in benefits to paid price meals. And for those situations, you are going to send the verification results letter, which is attachment G, to all of the households that were selected for verification, whether they provided you with what you asked for or not. Every household that was selected for verification and got attachment F, or your version of attachment F, must also receive attachment G, or that verification results letter. Next, you're going to document those verified applications. Again, Mary, who is the determining official, cannot be the confirming official, but she could also have been the person who conducted verification. And when verification on that selected meal application is completed, either by a response, a non-response, or an email saying, I'm not going to give you what you need or what you asked for, then Mary is going to sign the bottom section of that internal use or office use only section of the application. As we've discussed, it is not uncommon for there to be a reduction in benefits as a result of conducting verification. When you reduce a student's benefits, you have to notify the household. You must inform them of their right to reapply for benefits at any time. And if they choose to do so, At that time of application, they must also provide that supporting documentation or proof alongside that submitted application when they're reapplying later in the year. In order to process that, they should give you that supporting documentation that proves what they wrote on that application is accurate or true and correct. If the benefits are decreased from free to reduced or free to paid or reduced to paid, that notice of adverse action and the change of benefits must be sent. They must be provided 10 days advance notice prior to that actual reduction or termination of benefits too. And this information is provided on attachment G. In that template we make available, when again, attachment G is that verification results letter, there are fields that you would select if there was a reduction in benefits, and then it also identifies the date at which that reduction would be effective, and it has to be 10 days after the reduction in benefits was determined or needed to take place, when it was determined that it should be done. I've got a couple of important things to keep in mind for record retention. Of course, you want to keep all approved applications for this current school year. You also need to retain all of the documents that were submitted by the household, as well as any notes or correspondence, as well as a date stamp of submission of those documents submitted as part of the verification process. Though not required, we encourage you to use NDE's verification tracker form, which we call attachment H2, for each of those applications that you verified. It's just a nice place to keep all the documentation for the effort made, documentation received, phone calls taken, all that stuff. And then you also need to have a way to report the racial and ethnic data for the applications that are verified. And we utilize attachment H1 for that as well. So that would be another document to complete and then retain with your other records for the current school year. Again, all of these attachments are on the verification or verifying income page that we have too. So it's already right there. Use the attachments if you can. And if you have your own versions of those, I encourage you to do a side-by-side comparison to what we make available. That'll help you know if you're missing any parts or components that may need to be added to your versions. And finally, of course, what's next, right? After you complete this verification process, you hear back and have all the responses or non-responses from households selected, you would complete the verification report in the C&P system. Again, we're offering training for completing that report, and that's coming up on November 4th and November 13th. Though the report is due on November 15th, normally, remember, we're pushing it back to that next Monday, which would be November 17th for 2025. Schools do have the option to request a 1-month deadline extension on the completion of that report, and more information will be provided about that process, as well as reminders for training over the course of the month of October. So now is your time to ask questions. And I think I've seen a few of those come in through the chat. Megan, I bet you've been monitoring that. I'm going to stop the share of the screen. If I need to bring up a slide to show to answer a question, I'm happy to do that. But this helps me see all of you and keep track of the chat a little bit better.
I think there's only one question on there, Katie, from Suzanne. She works at an ESU. And it said, I work at an ESU and we have a level 3 programs. So do I have to get these forms from the students district that attend one of our level 3 programs? Or how does this work for ESUs?
Great question. I think I need you to define what a level 3 program is.
It would be our life skills program for 18 to 21-year-olds or our autism program. So we have them come to our buildings from our districts outside of our ESU.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, you would need to. I'm thinking back to guidance I chatted about with the regional office several months ago. You would need to receive a copy of the applications that the district received.
Okay.
Because these students are eating when they're in your supervision or at your building, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And we get our lunches through one of our public schools.
Yep, yeah, and I know they're enrolled at those home districts that maybe receive and process the application. But because the ESU has the agreement with us to participate in the school lunch program. And then, of course, you're claiming meals at the appropriate meal benefit or category for the students enrolled in your program, your level 3 program. You would want to receive and retain a copy of the application from the home district if they have one.
Okay.
I would advise you to just go through those and make sure they made the determination correctly
Okay.
too. Yeah,
And-
great
And
question.
you have to fill out those documentations as well? Or how does that work?
Say your question one more time. I was
Do I
kind of,
have to go fill out the requirement standards for the meal applications then? If I'm getting a copy from their home districts?
oh,
Or would their home districts do that since they get the original copy?
are you saying would they be included in the report of the verification report in the CNP system?
Yeah,
Right, good question. No, you should report them in yours because they're eating with you daily and
okay,
you're claiming their meals. So I'm glad you asked that question because it means I need to add that to the website and maybe make an email announcement about that. How even though the home district received and made the original determination, if they have students who go to an ESU, eat, and their meals are claimed through NSLP, then the ESU should take care of completing the verification reporting.
okay.
And then the home district would not include those students because we don't want them, obviously don't want it to be double counted. Yeah,
Exactly.
good question.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Is it Patty Finn? I see your message, P Finn. Guessing on your first name. I will have to read the eligibility manual. I think it's 10 calendar days. Up here. Within 10 days, make a determination. Yes, it's calendar days. Not like operating or school days. Yeah. Does it? I think that answers your question. Yeah, good deal. Any other questions? We haven't sent it yet, Danny. And I noticed a typo when I was talking that I really want to fix. So we'll get this recording uploaded to YouTube, and then we'll send the link to the recording as well as the slides I presented today, of course, after I fix my typo, next week by Tuesday. And so you should have it by then. If you don't get it by Wednesday, like it's Wednesday and you still haven't received it, hopefully it means we haven't missed your email address, but you can email Megan or me and we'll make sure you get it. But that's our timeline. So we'll send it to all the contacts we have access to through the CNP system. And if you receive notice about this training, we'll also include the registrants from this, understanding that you may not be one of those 3 positions identified in CNP, but you use the CNP system to register for this. So that'll be another list we check to make sure we don't miss anyone. Great questions. And thanks for your time, everybody. It's almost the weekend. We appreciate you hanging in there with us on a Friday afternoon. Yeah, don't hesitate to ask any questions you've got. We'll send you resources by Tuesday. And if your school didn't receive the email notice about the requirement to do standard verification or the other email for the schools allowed to do alternate, please reach out to Megan and or me, and we can help make sure you get the information you need so you can initiate the process next week. Thank you. Have a great weekend.